Hello there guys, gals, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Lapalarden, and welcome back to my weekly, but not really because I missed episode 3, review and recap series of the Halo TV show. I talk shit about it, so you don't have to, but in this rare instance, that might not be the case. There are definitely some issues which I'll get into, but for the most part, this week's episode, especially the latter half, was a banger, literally and figuratively. Before we get into the really juicy stuff, let's get this out of the way. Kwan and Soren do indeed have a presence in this week's episode, but to such a minimal extent that it's almost like the show's creators knew their storyline is the equivalent of wet dog food compared to a nice, but not too nice, medium well steak and chips. Soren cuffs Kwan up to the bike, ooh, kinky, that they used to escape from last week's episode and leaves, going to find transportation for them so they can find a ship that'll take them off-world. Kwan breaks out of the cuffs, hides under some rocks, stuns Soren when he comes back and seems to consider shooting him, and that's it. That's literally it. And frankly, thank God for that, because every time they cut away from the stuff on A Witness 2, I was resisting the urge to press that fast forward button. Also, can we get some new clothes for Kwan? She's wearing the same blood-soaked rags from the first episode. I'm sure she's probably miserable. Right, so to the good stuff. We start the episode off with a flashback sequence on Aridness 2 before the planet got scuffed, where Halsey and Jacob Keyes are observing a young John, something that'll likely come back to bite both of them in the arse. Flash forward to the present day, where the UNSC, led by Jacob Keyes, has set up a camp around the newly found Forerunner artifact. Miranda Keyes joins her father as he believes Miranda might be able to lend a hand in getting the artifact out of this rock. Chief stands Kai down from duty, deducing that she has also removed her hormonal pellet. What gave it away, I wonder? We see that Chief and Cortana's bond is still very rocky and in its early stages, the two of them having some not-so-friendly banter that usually just ends with the Chief telling her to shut up. Back on Madrigal, the Covenant are looking for clues to the larger keystone, with Marquis leading the search. Chief confronts Keyes about the vision he had of Halsey in his home before his parents died. Seems like the two of them have a closer affiliation than the show might have initially led on. Keyes said that as Chief's captain, that he'll investigate this personally, and bit of a problem here. Keyes is either a very convincing liar or just does not care at all for the Chief. Not only did he give the order to shoot Chief down in the first episode, but he was also partly responsible for kidnapping John as a kid. Don't think they quite see eye to eye on this issue somehow. Keyes, being freaked out over what John just disclosed to him, spills the beans to Admiral Parangoski, who also takes the opportunity to cut off Halsey, seeing that she's been stringing people along and that the promise she made to get Chief back in line has fallen through. Halsey plays her Lord Hood trap card that kind of came out of nowhere, insinuating that Hood will want to find a scapegoat to blame Chief's behavior on, and Parangoski might be that goat. Keyes asks Miranda to be taken off the project for, reasons, I guess. Creepy Irish guy, yes, he's Irish. I now know that, breaks into the crystal surrounding the Forerunner artifact, temporarily deafening everyone in the surrounding area. Miranda believes that it was a signal of some kind, and of course it reaches Marquis and the Covenant all the way in Madrigal, who touches a rock and now immediately knows the other part of the artifact is on Aridness 2. Yeah, this Blessed One stuff is kind of giving me the shits now. We haven't really gotten an explanation for how Marquis is able to do this stuff. Like, when she gets these visions and knows where an artifact is, does she just get, like, Google Maps of the galaxy pulled up in her head and the estimated arrival time to Aridness 2 on a slip space drive? Like, I don't know, but the quicker they hurry up and explain this, the more likely I'll be to shut up about it. John knows something is up with Halsey and Keyes, so he asks Cortana to research his adoption and find any records pertaining to the origins of the Spartan program. And Cortana finds nothing. Seems kinda sussy. Chief goes to touch the artifact out of frustration and sees further flashbacks to his childhood that we're probably familiar with as Halo fans. His abduction, getting replaced by a Flash clone, and being sedated by Halsey. John snaps out of the flashback and no prizes in guessing who just so happens to be there too. Halsey tries to talk John down again, but this time, it doesn't work. John goes to fucking Falcon Punch Halsey when Cortana steps in, shutting down John's neural bridge, rendering him unconscious. Chief wakes up a little while later to find the kind of bad news that you never want to hear.
Slip space roger detected.
The Covenant are here. The UNSC Pioneer is destroyed by the Coveys, with Keyes and the rest of the Spartans tasked with getting the artifact out of the cave and to Miranda's condor. They mount the artifact to a back of a warthog, with the Spartans following alongside, with Kai staying behind to give them cover, and if there was ever a good time to use the Halo theme, this was it. But they fucking don't, and I will never forgive them for it. Drop pods land from the cruiser above with jackals and grunts. The marine gunner on the Warthog gets super combined, which was hilarious, and a grunt hijacks the Warthog like a Chad. Jack Yap, yes, that's what I'm calling him now, has his moment of victory cut short as Chief and the rest of the Spartans commandeer the Warthog. Banshees start bombing the shit out of Miranda's Condor, and she leaves, making her way over to Halsey's ship. Phantoms drop jackals with energy blades, okay, something that I didn't know that I needed till now, behind the UNSC lines, with Kai trying her best to fend them off, while Chief and the other Spartans push up. Halsey sees Miranda running her way, and in a very out-of-character moment, but kind of wholesome, runs out to help her get on board and out of harm's way. Kai has a Vietnam flashback.
Congratulations, you just triggered a Vietnam flashback.
Obviously overwhelmed by everything she's seeing, and gets hit by an explosion. Noticing what's happening, Chief does the sickest thing I think this character has done since the Pelican dive from Infinite's campaign. He climbs onto the bonnet of a moving warthog, jumps off the side of a cliff onto a Banshee trying to hijack it, but wait, there's more. Silver Team get their Warthog hit by a falling Banshee, and the artifact drops into the canyon below. Kai is getting hit with a barrage of plasma fire, all hope seems lost, and then in the most Master Chief thing we've seen him do in this show so far, he steers the Banshee into a Phantom at full speed, blowing the thing up, and from out of the smoke emerges the Master Chief.
That's what I've been waiting for.
We've gotten Master Cheeks for the last few episodes, but nah. This is it, man. This is it. You can bet your ass he used armor lock to pull that off. What ensues I can only describe as the coolest fucking thing this show has done so far, as Chief proceeds to go ham on some coveys, saving Marines while picking up the various weapons around him like a shotgun and just ripping shit up. He shoots his way to Kai, who's getting pummeled by an elite with a plasma pistol that this time isn't made out of cardboard, thank Christ, brutally beating this elite to death with his bare hands. Cortana reminds him of the artifact, which is being intercepted by a spirit dropship, and as if the episode could not get any cooler, out drops a brute chieftain, gravity mace and all. Chief uses a jackal shield to deflect the hit from the chieftain, and then he says the line,
I need a weapon.
The chieftain leaves with the artifact, John firing his battle rifle aimlessly into the spirit as it flies away. Taking so long to beat the elite to death, his anger was likely the reason he was too slow to get to the artifact. As if things couldn't get any worse for poor Chief, the Covenant cruiser fires out a drop pod with Marquis inside. She steps out, fake faints as Chief just kind of stands there like, okay? So, did it suck? No. My Ooga Booga monkey brain has had its fill of Halo action that it's been craving the last few weeks, and was a massive improvement on the choppy, dodgy, CGI-ridden mess of the first episode's excuse of an action scene. The stuff with Halsey and John had me properly invested as he discovers more and more about his shady origins. Kwan and Soren's storyline, while utterly useless and served next to no purpose, didn't intrude on the rest of the episode, and Chief was just the highlight. There were definitely some issues I have, however. The episode seems to use these really obnoxious in-helmet shots that show Chief's face. They use this really bad post-production zoom sometimes. I think they were going for an Iron Man vibe, but it just comes off as them reminding the viewer that,
yes, there is indeed a man inside Master Chief's...
Again, the music was disappointing. I'm sure there's legal reasons as to why they couldn't use Marty and Michael's music, but come on, surely just for this scene you pay a little bit extra and get the license to use it, because this scene was already great, but can you imagine how awesome it would have been if those drums kicked in, the strings start building as the Spartans sprint into battle with the Warthog being behind them, like, oh man. Currently, the largest issue I have with the show, aside from the plot convenience and Marquis' ridiculous powers and all this blessed one crap, are the characters themselves. I understand that it is a very different interpretation that better fits within the story they're trying to tell, but this version of Miranda Keyes bears little to no similarities to the version of the character from the games, and I think the same could be argued for Jacob Keyes. He bears more of a physical resemblance to Sergeant Johnson with that outfit, and I don't see him being the morally incorruptible figure that the novels and games made him out to be, at least not from what we've seen so far, especially since he's willing to shoot Chief out of the fucking sky. Miranda, who quickly moved out of her mother's shadow and followed closely in her father's footsteps, becoming an acclaimed commander within the UNSC Navy, is instead all about getting Halsey's approval and being noticed by Senpai. Again, all for the sake of the show, I get it, but still, I can't help but feeling like they could have made them into completely different characters if they were going to be such a major departure from the ones we know in the games and novels. If I were a betting man, I'd say Marquis is definitely going to be the setup for the Covenant to find Reach by the end of the season. And overall, despite the first half not being particularly great, this is the most fun I've had with an episode of this show so far. If I was ranking it purely based on the first 20 or minutes or so, it'd likely be a 4.5, 5 out of 10, but those last few minutes carried it for me. So I'm going to be a little more generous this week and say 7 out of 10. Am I being blinded by the big explosions and fancy choreography? Yes. Am I overlooking the big picture that this show is in fact not close to the version of Halo that we all know and love, including the characters and how they're portrayed? Yes. But man, did I have fun watching this. Please, Paramount, 343, Showtime, whoever the hell's in charge of this show, more of this, please. So, did you enjoy episode 5 of the Halo TV series? Have you even seen it? Once again, let me know in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed hearing my juvenile take on this show that was just completely scatterbrained, please feel free to drop a like on the video and, because you know you want to, a subscription as well. You wouldn't. You're way scared.